After Effects teaches you so much about parenting. We could all have kids now.
We should all have kids now. Why don't we all have kids now?
So much patience.
We're working on the craziest video you will ever see. Kaizen's doing a 6-shot where a Galaxy S3 flies into the frame. Lena's doing a 6-shot where iPhone's warp speed. Matt's doing a 6-shot where a million of awesome things happen. What is it? What is it?
Well, the awesomest thing is going to be when the null object follows the path of the phone.
Nice.
Once that happens, then the magic
cool
begins.
things will happen.
Yeah.
You understood that, right, viewers? Okay, in here, I am working on just some shots of focus. There you go. Just some preliminary shots after the phones have zipped in out of warp. They're going to be doing some conversation back and forth about how they're not at the right place and Apple Maps, you know, didn't give them the correct location. You know, planning on the whole thing. Oh, Apple Maps really sucks right now. So that's what I'm working on. I've got like 3 or 4 shots in this After Effects project that I'm working on. Particularly in this one, we're using basically almost like exclusively Element 3D for all this 3D stuff. We're not using 3ds Max or any of the other 3D programs that we've used in the past, not Blender or anything. This is all happening right here in Element 3D and After Effects. So we'll see how this goes. It is a little, animating is a little tricky in Element. So if you guys are having trouble with that, you want to know how we were able to accomplish what we did, ask your questions and we'll answer them specifically.
Alright guys, what's up? I'm going to show you how we used Element to do every single shot in the entire short here. In the past we've used 3ds Max for 3D stuff, but with that you run into issues with render time, especially if you're doing motion blur or anything complex with the lighting. And we wanted to just kind of give Element a shot and see how well it would work for us here. Now, as it turns out, we ran into a lot of issues, kind of some limitations built into Element. It's great, but it did cause us problems, and it made things take a little longer than they would have with 3ds Max. But overall, the look we were going for was trying to mimic a lot of what the 2009 Star Trek film looked like. We really like what J.J. Abrams did with that. And so, for a lot of shots, we actually went through and we frame by framed exactly what happened and exactly how long certain things took to happen in the film Star Trek. So with the warping in and warping out specifically, we went exactly for the looks that we were able to find in there. Noticed a few different kind of interesting things that they're doing with the warping. First off, there's a lot of camera movement that happens when a ship warps out. The camera really gets just totally jacked. And ships warping in, not as much, but mostly with the warping out. Well, with the opening shot when the ships warp in, you'll notice there's actually a little bit of fire kind of coming off of the back of the ships here, if the next frame will render. And here we go. So here's the iPad coming in, and you can see there's a little bit of fire just kind of on this fringe here that we've got. And that was basically just doubling up the iPad layer that we had, a separate instance of Element. And we just applied a whole bunch of different crazy things to it. Did a turbulent displace with, I'll just kind of uncheck all these here so you can see if I solo this layer. So you get this globby looking thing that at one point looked like an iPad right there. Throw a turbulent displace on it, get it looking crazy. Throw a vector blur on that, get it looking all crackly and everything. And then a radial blur on top of that to stretch it out. And if you layer that underneath the iPad itself, you get sort of this fiery effect. And if you change the transfer mode of that fire layer to add, so it kind of brightens up whatever is behind it, so it looks like it's just shining. Throw a flare behind that, and you get a nice kind of looking, just sort of like it's just ripping through. It's on fire as it comes blasting in. And the important thing with any warping in shot is that it needs to just like hit a brick wall and stop all at once. So it all warps in like 7 frames or something like that. So that's kind of how we did the warp in shot. Everything else is being done through Element and a plugin called Trapcode Horizon. And we also used optical flares to get the sun and the flares when things warp in, warp out, that sort of thing. Overall, what we did was we created a single comp that we ended up duplicating a number of times, used over and over. That was just sort of the planet system kind of setup. You can see we've got a moon, which is actually a really, really big moon for what this is actually a texture of the planet Jupiter. It's actually from some satellite scans. And we were able to throw it down here, kind of stretch it out, and get it to work for us. You will notice that, yeah, this is actually a massive planet for how big Jupiter is. But the reason why we put this extra kind of moon in here is because we wanted to have something filling in the space of the background of every shot so that the shots looked interesting. In films like Star Trek, the action takes place near some big object, so you have a frame of reference. Same thing in Star Wars. They're constantly flying near things. The battles that just take place out in the middle of nowhere. I think there's in A New Hope, when they're in the Millennium Falcon and they're shooting TIE fighters that are attacking them, and those turrets, there's not really a lot of reference there. Really, the reference that you have is just the Millennium Falcon and the TIE fighters flying around that. But as far as like dogfighting scenes and things like that go, you need a frame of reference or it seems like you're not moving at all. So things need to be moving relative to the camera. And so generally they'll have them fly in close to a huge, like a Star Destroyer or something, fly along the surface of it, flying down the trench of the Death Star, that sort of stuff gives you a sense of how fast they're going. Otherwise in space, like I don't know if you guys have played any of the X-Wing games, X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter, anything like that, way back in the day. But if you flew far enough away from the battle, you felt like you weren't moving at all. And that's just the case with space. Everything's so far away. So what we did here was we wanted the battle to take place really close to the planet so that you had some sort of reference there for direction. And then so you look one direction and you see the sun. You look the other direction and you see the moon. So we kind of had all the action take place along this shadowy kind of border region of the planet here. And then if you flip all the way around, and I'm not exactly sure which camera's pointed that way right now, but you have sort of the core of the Milky Way, the other direction. And not really any of these angles here. But that kind of just helps to fill in the space on the other side. So, let's see if I flip it around this way. Here we go. You can kind of start to see it. Ignore the flare that's not moving with the camera. Yeah, there you go, kind of the core of the Milky Way out here. And this is what we use Trapcode Horizon for, kind of wrapped this around a sphere that is able to react to the camera. So no matter what direction the camera was facing, there was something interesting in the background. And that was important because the shots needed to look, have some sort of reference, some sort of frame of reference going on. So anyways, this kind of helped with continuity. Outside of that, a lot of what we did was simply just layering up element layers. Some of them we had to double up because we have a background where something else is going on the same object, where we needed a different effect, like the fire where they're warping in. But animating in Element is not as intuitive or straightforward as we would have liked. A lot of what we could have done really quickly in 3ds Max, like in the Tetris video, there's a scene at the very end of our Tetris movie trailer where there's a jet flying, and it's bobbing and weaving throughout some Tetris pieces, and it's moving in a very natural way because we used a program that was able to simulate flight path, but we were in 3ds Max and View for that. After Effects and Element doesn't really have that, and so all of that sort of thing had to be done totally by hand. And so that's why you'll notice a lot of the shots, things are pretty much just moving in straight lines. So you don't watch and see a ship curve around and go a different direction. You just see them coming from one direction, going to another, and they're all at different angles. Because, gosh dang, it was a pain in the butt to animate anything other than that. So, anyways, just throw some flares on your explosions. Make sure you're using your motion blur. Get some camera shake going on when things get hit and explode. And you should be good to go. If you guys have any specific questions about Element or anything in the video that we did that you'd like to know more about, go ahead and just shoot us a question on Twitter. at Warialaski, or leave it in a comment on this video below, or even ask us on our Facebook page, and we'll be sure to get back to you. So anyways, that's sort of it in a nutshell. You guys have an awesome day.